I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with Rachel Tenner, the casting director for Maid, which was adapted from the memoir by Stephanie Land. Now, this is a fictionalized adaptation, but did you take any guidance from the book in terms of how you cast it?
I did not. And in fact, that was in my first meeting with everybody. I was like, do I read the book or should I just stay away and like, let this be let the scripts be the information I need to do the job. And I think at the end of the day, we decided, let's just let the scripts, stand alone and cast from those. And then afterwards I can go, read the book, because I think I didn't read the book, but I think that, there are some differences. There are differences enough that it was probably just better to do it from the scripts. Yeah.
And Molly Smith Metzler is the showrunner. How was the collaboration with her? Like, did she have actors in mind as she was writing for some of the roles, or what was that like?
That's funny. I don't remember. I mean, I think in our first meeting when we first all got together, they had some names that they had been kicking around, and I had come in with my ideas and stuff like that. And it wasn't anyone. I think there were a couple people that we all agreed on right away that we should, talk about and get into it. But at the end of the day, we decided to, open this up, and we did a real exhaustive audition process for the lead, for Margaret's role, for Alex, at the end of the day. So, but yeah, she's amazing. I don't know if you've met her yet, but Molly is, she's very generous, very creative, very generous, very smart, and supportive, creatively as well. So it was a real joy to get to work with her. And actually the whole team. I mean, John Wells is amazing. And, Aaron was great, or John Taw and Brett and, Tom and Margot. Yeah, everyone's really great on this show.
And of course, the role of Alex is, crucially important. She's in every single scene, and you eventually landed on Margaret Qualley. What were the qualities you were looking for as you were sort of, auditioning for that role?
I think that Alex really had to, she had to embody a lot of different elements. There had to be, she's intelligent, she's kind, she's troubled, you know what I mean? Like there just had to be a mix of all these different, sides of, a human to have to all exist in Alex. And I think at the end of the day, you had the strength and the vulnerability and the humor, to bring the humor to it. And we read a lot of, there's so many great actors, in that age group, men and women. And so it was a really exciting process to get to read so many people. And it was also the beginning of COVID. So it was right at the shutdown. And they were like, let's just keep going. We figured out the whole Zoom thing, and we ended up working on this through through the pandemic. And we were actually able to cast our leads through the Zoom process, which was kind of amazing. So that was the first time I had gone from beginning to end of a show, via Zoom and without, auditioning in person and stuff like that. So, so that was also really an interesting piece to the casting process. But at the end of the day, Margaret was just, she just had it all. And she's just so interesting, and she's so watchable, and it's hard not to fall in love with her when you watch her. And I think you really need to with Alex, because as she kind of muddies her way through her life, making choices that are not necessarily like what I'm older, so now I'm like, don't do that. But, you have to watch somebody make their way through that process. And I just think she's so dynamic and so interesting as an actor. So I was really thrilled that it went her way.
Is it more challenging to go through a casting process, through Zoom as opposed to in person, or in some ways it easier because you're already seeing them on screen and so you get a sense of them that way?
I mean, at the end of the day, it works. I'm surprised that you can still get such a sense of somebody, doing it this way. You really can, and you really can interact with them when you're doing scenes and things like that. what I think this has allowed casting to do, this whole process of, self-taping and Zoom and all that kind of stuff, is to really allow yourself to see so many more people than you usually were able to in the past. You know what I mean? When you're doing it in person, you physically can only see so many people a day. You know what I mean? And there are a very finite number of weeks, and so you're kind of limited in how many people you see. And when you do self tapes, you can, I mean, as long as you're going to sit down and watch them all, which I do and my associate Rick Messina does, like we watch everything. So it's I can see hundreds of people for a role if I want to, that normally maybe I could only have seen 50 before or something like that. So I love that piece. I think I miss the callback period. I miss being in the room with actors and your director and getting to kind of work stuff out together in person. And I think we're, getting closer to going back to that anyway. But it has been one of the things that's come out of this that I've really started to enjoy, and it, I think, has kind of opened things up a lot more.
And of course, Qualley ended up helping bring her real life mother, Andy McDowell, on to play her on-screen mother on the show.
Right. Yeah, that helps when you have the daughter pitching it to her. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that something that you had in mind when you cast Margaret Qualley? Like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could get Andy to play?
Not at that time. No, not at that time. I mean, when we got to that role and we started working on the list and the ideas, and her name, we were talking about Andy, of course. But you're always like, wait, is that like brilliant or is that not going to work? Because I'm always surprised, like, why aren't more mothers and daughters acting together, or why aren't brothers and sisters acting together? Like, it seems like that would be so fun for everybody. But, I didn't grow up in their families, so who knows? But I think at the end of the day, I mean, besides them being mother and daughter, Andy's also was just really great for the role. You know what I mean? I don't think we would have done it just for mother-daughter sake if Andy wasn't, as skilled as she is, as good of an actor as she is, and as well suited for the role as she was. So yeah, it wasn't like a gimmick thing. It actually was pretty organic and I think ultimately worked really well. But, it wasn't something I thought of right when Margaret got cast.
And on the other end of the generational spectrum of these of this family, Riley Neve Whittet plays Alex's daughter Maddie, and she's on screen with Qualley so much, so that role was so important too. What qualities are you looking for in like a child actor, to play that role?
Yeah, and that's Corinne Clark and Jennifer Page in Canada, who were my Canadian counterparts. And because of COVID, and all those that was like that was at that stage when we shot, it was at the height of all the mandates. Like, you had to quarantine for 14 days in Canada, and you couldn't, there were so many rules. So we really leaned pretty heavily on our casting directors in Canada to flush out a lot of the cast that weren't going to be able to come from the US anymore, that in the old days would have been much easier. And so they're awesome if you haven't met them or know them, but they are, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you're trying to find a child actor who seems truthful, and even in the most base levels can focus and can listen and all that kind of stuff. But also, just seems really truthful in the moments, which is, a hard thing to get. And they found her and she was awesome. Yeah.
And we have Nick Robinson playing Sean, Alex's ex on the show, and on again, off again, that complex relationship. And his casting sort of plays against the stereotypes a lot of, for like domestic abusers we often see in media.
Yeah.
How important was it to cast against type for that role, just to show how different
exactly
we're used to seeing?
Because it really could take, so many different forms. It's not just, if you're abusive, you're not just one kind of person, And I think it was really important to us to find somebody that you understood why she loved him so much. You know what I mean? Like, why you're so attracted to him and his charm, because, he's he's charming when he wants to be, you know what I mean? And he's loving when he wants to be. And nobody, I think, you know, and where it evolved to wasn't where it started. You know what I mean? So I think it was really important to find somebody that you know, you also felt something for at the end of the day, regardless of what was happening. And Nick is, you know, I mean, he's you know, he's all that. He's all that. And I felt like it was fun to see him do, not that he hasn't before, but I think a lot of his roles, he's a very sweet natured, you know, guy, and like some of the roles that he plays. So it was kind of fun to see him take a little bit more of a turn in this, you know, so it was exciting for us.
Yeah, and an audience member who has a relationship with his past work, it's also especially helpful then to, you know, because he's charming the audience as well as he's charming Alex.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I don't know what you thought when you watched him, but you really do have to believe that that he's complicated. You know, you don't want it to just be this one note, you know, kind of guy. And obviously that's a testament to Molly and certainly to John Wells, you know, to directing and writing it to be, you know, more complex than it often can be.
And you have Anika Noni Rose, who is also sort of playing against type, because I think of her as a very kind of warm and welcoming presence. Yeah. But early on in the show, you know, she's much more cold and dismissive towards Alex until we learn more about her, and they learn more about each other. Tell me about the decision to cast her, how she came on board.
She's like so easy. I mean, she's Anika Noni Rose. Like, you know, I'm a fan of hers, you know, ends up Molly was a fan of her, John was a fan of, I mean, it was like one of those, you know, we were just so happy she was available, you know, and as far as just being able to do the performance, that was you know, I didn't even think twice about it. You know, that was like, that's probably our easiest role, you know, so I know, I wish it was a more complex process or thoughtful process, but it was that easy.
And what do you think she brought to the role that was especially, you know, impactful?
You know, I think that, you know, like she does so often, is she just brings, you know, a strength and a truthfulness to her. And again, it's like really the same thing. And it's about how these roles are written, you know, because they're never just one thing. You know, she obviously has this whole other life happening and this whole other, you know, storm brewing inside of her that needs to be, that we need to eventually see. And we need to eventually see the warmth and the vulnerability, certainly the vulnerability, you know, and so somebody who can embody all of that, you know, the strength, the cold, the warmth, the vulnerability, you know, so attractive. Like there's just, you know, she just has like she has such a unique quality to her. And I thought she just brought all of that to the role.
Now, you know, the rest of this cast, were there any other roles that, you know, were the roles that you found challenging to cast, where you were looking at a lot of actors to find, you know, who really would be the best fit?
I didn't think if there's anybody else that was like extra challenging in any way. You know, oh, you know who was Amy Carrero was really good. You know what I mean? It was for Danielle, you know, the girl who's at the shelter with her. I thought she did a wonderful job. And that was something that I think took maybe a little longer than normal to get to. But I was really happy that she ended up getting it. And I thought she, you know, she was really great. But no, I don't remember anything else being, you know, so much of it, again, the rest of so much of it, you know, Jennifer and Corinne had to, you know, shoulder a lot of the roles as well. But I don't remember any of us having major problems with anything. I'm trying to think. Do you like when I think I look off to the distance?
It's very pensive.
I should just be like, let me think on that for a second. Yeah, that was it.
Well, there's another memorable role that really stands out on the show, and that's Basil, played by Toby Levins, who is such
Oh
an
my God.
interesting contrast to Sean, because here we have another kind of abusive character, but
Yeah.
it takes such a just completely different form. And he's, you know, a kind of absurd, but also kind of sinister. And he's such a this mix of qualities.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that like?
You would think that would be a harder one to do, but honestly, Toby, I've been a fan of Toby for a long time. You know, we've had a bunch of shows shoot in Canada, and so he's like one of my favorites. And same for Corinne and Jen, they love him too. So when I think the three of us were talking about that role, you know, again, I think Toby was like, we were like, we got to get Toby in right away. And of course, he nailed it. You know, I know you think some of them are going to be so much more complicated, but at the end of the day, you know, sometimes when you know that right person is right there, and you know they're going to be able to do it well, it just kind of makes it easier to cast, of course. But
Well,
yeah, he's a great role. He's a great actor.
Yeah, and it does seem like that's sort of almost the perfect situation where you find a role and like someone immediately comes to mind, and it seems like, you know, they were just kind of born to play it.
Yeah, yeah. All those moments are so good. You know, when you just have a chance to like call your showrunner or your director or whoever and be like, you know who this is? You know who this is? It's blah, blah, blah. And they're like, totally. And then if you get to move on it and it all works out, like that's, you know, that's amazing. I remember on Fargo one year with Jesse Plemons, I remember calling Noah. I was in the car and I was like, oh, it's Jesse Plemons. And I called Noah. And I was like, you know who it is? It's Jesse Plemons. And he was like, totally. And then like the next day we just went out to Jesse Plemons. And I was like, well, if all casting could be that, that would be amazing, you know, but the process is great too. I shouldn't say that, you know.
Well, congratulations on the entire process of Maid and everyone in it. I think you know, the way that cast came together is a testament to a lot of your work. So thank you so much for talking with me about it.
Oh my God, thank you for taking an interest. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'm always interested in casting, just because there's so much, you know, that you don't think about consciously, and then you realize, oh, like I just saw someone who I didn't even think of them as an actor. I just thought this is the person that they are.
Right.
And I always feel like that's casting.
That's the highest compliment. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well,
all right.
congratulations again, and
Thank you.
thank you so much.